Imagine discovering the person you've built your life with has been living a lie, a web of deceit, betrayal, and manipulation. But instead of losing control, you quietly plan your escape, every move calculated to take back what's yours. This isn't just a story of heartbreak, it's a story of resilience, justice, and the ultimate act of revenge. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below, and if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another gripping tale. It all started on a warm summer evening at a local farmer's market in Boulder, Colorado. The air was filled with the mingling aromas of fresh produce, baked goods, and sizzling food trucks. Aaron, a 32-year-old software developer, had stopped by after work, looking to pick up some organic honey and maybe a fresh loaf of bread. Little did he know that evening would change his life forever. He first noticed Claire standing at a stall of homemade candles, her laughter bright and contagious as she chatted with the vendor. She had an effortless charm, her sun-kissed blonde hair cascading over her shoulders, her eyes sparkling with curiosity as she sniffed each candle. There was a warmth about her that drew Aaron in, a magnetism he couldn't quite explain. Gathering his courage, Aaron approached the stall, pretending to be interested in the same candles. She noticed him fumbling with a jar labeled Lavender Dreams and smiled. "That one's my favorite," she said, her voice soft but confident. That simple comment sparked a conversation that flowed as easily as if they had known each other for years. They talked about everything: their favorite childhood memories, their love for the outdoors, and their shared dream of one day owning a little cabin in the mountains. Over the next few months, their relationship blossomed. Aaron found himself falling hard for Claire's adventurous spirit and infectious positivity. She was the kind of woman who turned mundane errands into mini adventures, who saw beauty in the smallest of things. They went hiking on weekends, cooked elaborate meals together, and spent hours dreaming about the future. Marriage was an inevitable step, a natural progression of the love that seemed destined to last a lifetime. When Aaron proposed to Claire on a snowy December evening, surrounded by twinkling lights and a blanket of fresh snow, she said yes without hesitation. In that moment, it felt like the universe had conspired to bring them together, two souls perfectly aligned. Their wedding, a small ceremony in the foothills of the Rockies, was the stuff of fairy tales. As they exchanged vows under a canopy of aspen trees, Aaron truly believed they were embarking on a lifetime of happiness. Little did he know, the cracks in their perfect picture were already beginning to form, hidden beneath the surface, waiting to reveal themselves. The first signs of tension crept in slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. It began with the little things, the way Claire would roll her eyes during their minor disagreements, or how Aaron would sigh more deeply when discussing bills or schedules. These moments, while fleeting, left a faint shadow over their once effortless conversations. As the months went on, Claire's job at a marketing firm started demanding more of her time. "We're launching a big campaign," she explained one evening as she typed furiously on her laptop at the kitchen table. Aaron tried to be understanding, but the long hours and late-night emails became a regular occurrence. Weekends, once filled with hikes and cozy dinners, turned into Claire catching up on work or claiming she needed me time. Aaron chalked it up to the pressures of her job, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. Their conversations, which used to flow so naturally, now felt stilted and perfunctory. When Aaron would ask about her day, Claire's responses were clipped as if she was guarding something. Once, when he asked why she seemed distracted, she snapped, "Not everything's about you, Aaron." Her sharpness stung, leaving him bewildered. He began second-guessing himself, wondering if he was being too sensitive. One evening, Aaron noticed Claire's phone buzzing incessantly on the counter while she was in the shower. A name he didn't recognize flashed on the screen: Ryan Work. When he casually asked about it later, her response was immediate and defensive. "It's just a coworker," she said, her tone slightly too quick. "We're brainstorming ideas for the campaign." Aaron wanted to believe her, but her sudden need to guard her phone, coupled with her growing emotional distance, planted a seed of doubt in his mind. The connection they once shared felt like it was slipping through his fingers, and for the first time, he began to wonder if their perfect life was unraveling. From Aaron's point of view, their marriage was a partnership worth fighting for. He loved Claire deeply and wanted nothing more than to see her happy. Whenever disagreements arose, he was usually the first to apologize, even when he didn't think he was at fault. To him, keeping the peace was more important than proving a point. Marriage takes effort, he would remind himself during their rough patches. You have to meet each other halfway. Balancing his job as a software developer with their personal life wasn't always easy. Aaron's work often required him to travel for client meetings and conferences. He did his best to minimize the time away from home, but there were weeks when the demands of his job pulled him to other cities. He hated being apart from Claire, though she seemed to take it in stride. "It's fine," she'd say, with a shrug. "I'm busy too." Claire's career, meanwhile, was accelerating at a breakneck pace. She thrived in her role at the marketing firm, quickly earning the trust of her boss and landing several high-profile accounts. Aaron admired her ambition, but it sometimes felt like her work was her first love. On nights when they managed to sit down for dinner together, she would dive into stories about office politics and tight deadlines. Aaron would listen attentively, nodding and offering encouragement, even as he wished she'd ask about his day in return. Still, Aaron was proud of her accomplishments. He tried to show his support in small ways, picking up her favorite takeout after a late night, surprising her with flowers for no reason, or helping her brainstorm ideas for presentations. Yet, no matter how much effort he put in, the emotional distance between them seemed to grow. He often wondered if it was just a phase, something they would work through as they always had. When his travel schedule ramped up during the summer, Aaron noticed a shift. Claire stopped complaining about his time away and seemed almost relieved when he told her about upcoming trips. He convinced himself it was because she appreciated the alone time to focus on her projects. But deep down, a nagging voice whispered that something didn't feel right. Despite the growing unease, Aaron held on to hope. He believed in the vows they'd exchanged and thought their love was strong enough to withstand life's challenges. After all, every marriage had its ups and downs, right? It never crossed his mind that Claire might not feel the same way anymore. The first crack in Aaron's resolve came on an otherwise unremarkable Saturday afternoon. He had just finished washing his car and was tidying up the back seat when he noticed something wedged beneath the passenger seat. Pulling it out, his stomach dropped. A lacy black bra, one he didn't recognize. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of it. Maybe it had slipped out of one of Claire's gym bags, he thought, but the more he tried to rationalize, the less it made sense. Claire didn't own lingerie like this, or at least none he had ever seen. When he brought it up to her later that evening, her reaction was instant and sharp. "Are you seriously accusing me of something?" she snapped, snatching the bra from his hand. "It's probably one of my friends. I must have given her a ride home from yoga or something." She laughed, but it felt forced, her tone too dismissive. Aaron nodded, forcing himself to let it go, though the unease lingered like a shadow. From then on, small incidents began to pile up, each adding another layer to his growing doubt. Claire's phone, once casually left on countertops or couches, was now glued to her side. She would flip the screen down whenever a notification buzzed, or excuse herself to another room to take calls. "Work's been insane," she explained when Aaron gently questioned her. "You wouldn't understand." Her behavior became increasingly erratic. She would come home hours later than expected, claiming last-minute meetings or team dinners. Once, she came back smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't Aaron's. When he asked about it, she waved it off with a laugh. "You're imagining things," she said, leaning in to kiss him on the cheek. But the scent lingered in his mind long after she walked away. Aaron's internal conflict grew with each passing day. He wanted to believe her, to trust the woman he had married. Yet a gnawing voice in the back of his mind whispered that something wasn't right. "You're being paranoid," he told himself repeatedly. "Claire loves you. She wouldn't." But the doubt was a seed now, and with every suspicious glance or evasive answer, it began to take root. "She impresses me with her love of music, her joyous laughter at appearances." Caught between his instincts and his desire to preserve their marriage, Aaron found himself in a painful limbo. The woman he loved seemed to be slipping away, and he didn't know how to stop it, or if he even could. It was a rainy Tuesday evening, and Aaron was on his way home after an early client meeting had been canceled. As he drove past the downtown area, a familiar figure caught his eye through the windshield. It was Claire, laughing as she stepped out of a sleek black car in front of a boutique hotel. She wasn't alone. A tall, sharply dressed man opened the umbrella for her, his hand resting lightly on her lower back as they walked toward the entrance. Aaron's grip tightened on the steering wheel as his heart began to race. For a moment, he tried to convince himself it wasn't what it seemed. Maybe it was a work thing, a client meeting perhaps. But something about the intimacy of their body language shattered any illusions he tried to build. Against his better judgment, he parked the car a block away and followed them. They entered a small building and walked down a staircase. Aaron lifted the restraining hand to stop them, but when they reached his car, Aaron grabbed it before it had a chance to drop away. The hotel lobby was dimly lit, exuding a quiet elegance. Aaron hung back, his pulse thundering in his ears as he watched them check in at the front desk. Claire was smiling up at the man in a way she hadn't smiled at him in months. The man leaned in, whispering something that made her laugh softly, her hand brushing his arm. Aaron felt like the ground beneath him was crumbling, his worst fears materializing right before his eyes. They moved toward the elevator, and Aaron's feet seemed rooted to the marble floor. Every logical part of his brain screamed at him to turn around, to leave, to spare himself the inevitable pain. But he couldn't. His legs moved on their own as he followed, staying just far enough behind to avoid being seen. When the elevator doors closed behind him, he stared at the floor indicator, watching it stop at the 5th floor. Aaron lingered at the foot of the stairs. Moments later, Aaron found himself standing outside room 503, his chest heaving as he tried to catch his breath. He didn't knock, he didn't call out. Instead, he stood there, the muffled sound of laughter and indistinct voices seeping through the door like poison. His hands trembled as he clenched them into fists, the sheer weight of betrayal crushing him. The anger came first, hot and all-consuming, threatening to boil over. Then the heartbreak followed, sharp and deep, cutting him to his core. Disbelief hovered above it all, a futile hope that this wasn't real, that somehow he had misunderstood. But as the seconds stretched into an eternity, Aaron knew there was no mistake. The woman he loved, the woman he had built his life around, was behind that door with another man. And in that moment, the world as he knew it came crashing down. Aaron didn't remember how he got back to his car. His legs felt like lead, his chest hollow and aching as though all the air had been sucked from his lungs. He sat in the driver's seat, staring blankly at the steering wheel, trying to make sense of what he had just witnessed. Every time he closed his eyes, the image of Claire's smile and the other man's touch replayed in vivid detail, each memory cutting deeper than the last. Eventually, the numbness gave way to a wave of uncontrollable anguish. His hands slammed against the steering wheel, a guttural cry escaping his throat. It wasn't just anger or sadness. It was the unbearable weight of betrayal, the shattering of everything he had believed about their life together. The rain pelted against the windshield as if echoing his pain, but it brought no comfort. Without a clear plan, Aaron started driving. He didn't know where he was going, only that he couldn't go home. Not yet. The empty streets blurred around him as he drove aimlessly, his mind racing. Somehow, he ended up in the parking lot of a dimly lit bar on the outskirts of town. The neon sign buzzed faintly, casting a soft glow on the wet pavement. It wasn't a place he'd ever been before, but at that moment, it didn't matter. He just needed an escape. Inside, the bar was quiet, save for the low hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses. Aaron slid onto a stool at the far end, head down, avoiding eye contact. The bartender, a grizzled man with kind eyes, poured him a whiskey without asking. "Rough night?" he asked gently. Aaron nodded but didn't elaborate. He took a sip, the burn of the alcohol momentarily dulling the pain. It wasn't long before someone took the seat next to him. "You look like a guy who's been through hell," the man said, his voice calm and steady. Aaron glanced up to see a man in his 50s with a weathered face and a quiet confidence. He introduced himself as Rye, a regular at the bar. There was something disarming about him, something that made Aaron lower his guard. Aaron sat and waited for the woman to come up to him. Aaron held the center of attention. As Aaron began to share the barest outline of what had happened, Rye listened intently, nodding occasionally. When Aaron finished, Rye leaned back and spoke with the wisdom of someone who had been through his own battles. "You can't control what she did, man," he said, his voice even. "But you can control what happens next. Don't let this define you. Sometimes, the best thing you can do is walk away and start fresh." Rye's words didn't erase the pain, but they planted a small seed of clarity in Aaron's storm of emotions. For the first time that night, he began to consider that maybe, just maybe, he could survive this. The decision to leave wasn't made in an instant. It came slowly, piece by piece, as Aaron replayed the events of that fateful night over and over in his mind. Each memory, the laughter, the whispers, the intimacy she shared with another man, was a dagger to his heart. But what finally broke him wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the realization that no amount of love or effort on his part could fix what Claire had so willingly destroyed. Returning home the following morning felt surreal. The house, once filled with warmth and memories, now seemed cold and unfamiliar. He moved through it like a ghost, avoiding the bedroom where Claire still slept, blissfully unaware of what he had witnessed. Standing in the living room, surrounded by the remnants of their life together, Aaron felt a sharp pang of grief, but alongside it was something else. A growing determination to reclaim his dignity and start over. Quietly, he began packing his belongings. He pulled out an old duffel bag from the closet, carefully folding clothes and tucking them away. Each item he packed felt like a small goodbye, a farewell to the life he thought he had, to the dreams they once shared. His movements were deliberate, almost ritualistic, as if by packing, he was slowly piecing himself back together. At one point, he paused, staring at a framed photo on the mantel. It was from their honeymoon, both of them smiling against a backdrop of azure skies and sandy beaches. For a brief moment, he considered taking it with him. But, as he traced the edges of the frame with his fingers, he realized it was just a relic of a love that no longer existed. He placed it back with a steady hand, leaving it behind as a symbol of closure. The hardest part wasn't packing. It was confronting the truth that his marriage was irreparable. Aaron had always believed in fighting for the people you love, in giving second chances. But this wasn't something he could forgive. Claire's betrayal had cut too deep, and the trust they had built was shattered beyond repair. The clock struck 3. Before leaving, he wrote a note. It was short and to the point, devoid of anger or blame. "I know," it began. "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I'm moving on." With one last glance around the house, he slung the duffel bag over his shoulder and walked out the door, closing it softly behind him. It was the sound of an ending and the start of something new. As Aaron stood by the kitchen counter, the finality of his decision began to sink in. The duffel bag by his feet was packed, the note he had written placed neatly on the table. But there was one more thing he needed to leave behind. He slid his wedding ring off slowly, the cool metal a stark contrast to the warmth of his skin. For years, it had been a symbol of their commitment, their promises to each other. Now it felt like a weight he no longer wanted to carry. He placed the ring on top of the note, its subtle gleam catching the morning light streaming through the window. The gesture wasn't just about letting go of the marriage, it was about reclaiming himself. The sight of it sitting there felt strangely cathartic, a physical representation of the life he was leaving behind. He reached out and grabbed the note from his pocket, contemplating whether he should throw it away. The answer was still no. He opened his hand. Aaron lingered for a moment, taking in the stillness of the house. It was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that seemed to echo with memories. He thought about the laughter they used to share in this very kitchen, the late-night talks, the plans for the future. But those memories now felt like they belonged to a different lifetime, one that had slipped through his fingers. Mixed emotions swirled within him as he walked toward the door. Sadness tugged at his heart, a deep ache for what they had once been. At the same time, a sense of relief began to rise, like the first breath of fresh air after being underwater for too long. And beneath it all was resolve, a quiet determination to move forward, no matter how uncertain the road ahead might be. With one last glance, Heron stepped outside, closing the door softly behind him. The sound was final, like the closing of a chapter he knew he would never revisit. As he walked toward his car, the weight of his decision lifted ever so slightly, leaving room for something new: hope. The drive to the hills felt like shedding layers of a suffocating weight. With each passing mile, the city faded into the distance, replaced by winding roads flanked by towering pines and open skies. Aaron rolled down the window, letting the crisp mountain air fill the car. It was as if the fresh air carried away pieces of the pain he'd been holding on to, leaving him with a sense of quiet relief. For the first time in what felt like forever, he could breathe. When he finally pulled into the gravel driveway of the small trailer he had rented, the sight before him brought an unexpected wave of calm. The trailer wasn't much. Its exterior was weathered and the surrounding area was rugged and wild. But it had a charm that spoke of simplicity and solitude. The view beyond was breathtaking. Rolling hills blanketed in emerald green, the distant peaks dusted with snow, and a sky so vast it seemed infinite. It wasn't just a place, it felt like a sanctuary. Stepping out of the car, Aaron took a moment to take it all in. The quiet was almost startling, broken only by the gentle rustling of leaves and the occasional chirp of a bird. He stood there, hands in his pockets, letting the stillness seep into him. It was a stark contrast to the chaos of the last few days, and for the first time he felt a glimmer of hope. Inside the trailer, the modest furnishings were worn but cozy. A small kitchenette, a snug bed, and a table by the window overlooking the hills. It was everything he needed and nothing he didn't. As he placed his bag down and sank into the chair by the window, Aaron felt a sense of peace that had eluded him for months. This was his new beginning, a place to heal, to rebuild, and to rediscover who he was beyond the pain. The first few days in the hills were quiet, almost eerily so. Aaron found himself waking up with the sun, the golden light streaming through the trailer's small windows and bathing the room in warmth. The mornings were cold but invigorating, the crisp mountain air helping him shake off the weight of restless nights. He began to develop simple routines that gave his days a sense of structure. Each morning he brewed coffee on the tiny stovetop, savoring the rich aroma as he sat by the window, watching the mist rise off the hills. Afterward, he'd take long walks along the trails surrounding the property, his boots crunching on the gravel paths as he soaked in the sights and sounds of nature. There was something therapeutic about the steady rhythm of walking, the way the world seemed to come alive with the chirps of birds and the rustle of leaves. These moments became his sanctuary, a time for reflection and clarity. In the evenings, he would sit outside with a notebook, jotting down thoughts or sketching the landscape. Writing had never been his forte, but putting his emotions on paper felt cathartic. Slowly, he began to untangle the mess of feelings inside him, the anger, the heartbreak, the lingering sadness. For the first time in months, he started to feel lighter. It wasn't long before Rye showed up, a cooler of cold beer in hand and a warm smile on his face. "Thought you might need some company," Rye said, setting the cooler down on the small porch. They talked for hours, Rye sharing stories about his younger days in the hills and the lessons he'd learned through his own struggles. Aaron found himself laughing, something he hadn't done in weeks. Rye's presence was grounding, a steady reminder that healing was possible. They had more to talk about. How normal it felt to be alive. Over time, Rye began introducing Aaron to his family. His wife Maggie was a kind-hearted woman who insisted Aaron join them for Sunday dinners. Their 2 teenage kids, Emma and Luke, were bright and full of life, their energy infectious. Being around them reminded Aaron of what it felt like to belong. to be part of something larger than himself. The adjustment wasn't always easy. There were still moments when the pain resurfaced, sharp and unexpected. But with each passing day, Aaron found himself embracing his new life more fully. The routines, the quiet, and the kindness of Rye's family became the foundation of his recovery, a reminder that even in the aftermath of loss, there was still so much to be grateful for. As the weeks turned into months, Aaron began to find joy in the simple things. The hills surrounding his trailer became more than just a backdrop. They became his sanctuary. Each morning he laced up his running shoes and set out on trails that twisted through towering pines and wildflower meadows. At first he struggled with the steep inclines, his legs burning and his breath short. But as the days went by, his stamina improved, and the rhythm of running became a meditative escape. The sound of his feet hitting the dirt and the steady beat of his heart reminded him of his resilience. On weekends, he ventured further into the wilderness. He packed a small bag with water, snacks, and a camera he had dusted off from years ago. Hiking solo felt empowering. The solitude gave him time to reflect, to appreciate the beauty around him, and to listen to his own thoughts without interruption. Standing on the summit of a hill, gazing at the endless expanse of valleys and peaks, he felt a profound sense of freedom. It was as if the mountains were telling him he was capable of overcoming anything. Simplifying his life became another source of fulfillment. Living in the trailer meant he had to prioritize what truly mattered. Gone were the days of accumulating unnecessary things. Instead, Aaron found joy in cooking simple meals, repairing small fixtures in the trailer, and even growing a few herbs in pots outside. The slower pace of life allowed him to reconnect with himself in ways he hadn't thought possible. His independence grew with each small victory, fixing a leaky pipe in the trailer on his own, running further than he ever had before, or learning how to navigate the unmarked trails without getting lost. All of these moments added to his growing confidence. He no longer felt weighed down by the betrayal or the need to prove himself to anyone. Every evening, as he watched the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, Aaron felt a sense of peace. He was no longer just surviving, he was living. The hills, the trails, and the quiet simplicity of his new life were helping him rediscover not only joy, but also his own strength. For the first time in a long while, he felt truly free. It happened on an early autumn morning, the kind where the air was crisp and the forest floor was blanketed in golden leaves. Aaron was halfway through his favorite trail, lost in the steady rhythm of his run, when he rounded a bend and nearly collided with someone. Startled, he stumbled to a stop, muttering an apology as he caught his breath. "That's one way to make an introduction," the woman said with a warm laugh. She was holding a hiking pole in one hand and a map in the other. Her auburn hair was pulled into a loose ponytail, and her cheeks were flushed from the cool air. Aaron noticed her eyes first, bright, curious, and kind. "I didn't expect to see anyone else out here this early," Aaron replied, still catching his breath. She introduced herself as Emily, an artist who had recently moved to the area. She explained that she was scouting locations for a series of landscape paintings and had taken a wrong turn on the trail. The two struck up an easy conversation as Aaron offered to guide her back to the main path. Emily's enthusiasm for the outdoors and her sharp wit made the hike feel shorter than usual. She pointed out details Aaron hadn't noticed before. A patch of mushrooms tucked against a tree, the way sunlight filtered through the branches. Her perspective was refreshing, her energy light and contagious. By the time they reached the trailhead, Aaron felt a sense of ease he hadn't experienced with anyone in a long time. Emily thanked him with a smile and offered her number. "In case I get lost again." Aaron hesitated, his mind flashing to the scars of his past, but something about her made him want to take a chance. As he tucked the scrap of paper into his pocket, he reminded himself to take things slow. He wasn't ready for anything serious, but meeting Emily felt like a gentle nudge toward opening his heart again. It wasn't about replacing what he had lost. It was about discovering something new, something lighter and more hopeful. For the first time, the idea of letting someone in didn't feel so impossible. It was a rainy afternoon, and Aaron had stopped by the local coffee shop for a warm drink after a long hike. The place was small and cozy, with the comforting hum of conversations and the occasional clink of ceramic mugs. He had just settled into a corner table, his hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee, when he saw her. Claire. For a moment, Aaron froze. Time seemed to stand still as he processed the sight of her standing at the counter, nervously scanning the room. She looked different, her hair slightly shorter, her face thinner, and her posture less confident than he remembered. He felt a wave of emotions crash over him: shock, anger, and a flicker of something he couldn't quite name. He considered slipping out unnoticed, but before he could move, their eyes met. Her expression changed instantly. Surprise flashed across her face, followed by something that looked like relief. Or was it desperation? She hesitated for a moment, then walked toward him, her movements uncertain. "Aaron," she said softly when she reached his table. Her voice wavered, and he could see her hands trembling slightly. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Hmm?" He sat back, his body stiff with tension. Claire took a seat across from him without waiting for an invitation. Her eyes darted around the room as if gathering the courage to speak. Finally, she looked directly at him, her expression pleading. "I know I'm the last person you want to see right now," she began, her voice cracking. "But I've been looking for you. I needed to talk to you." Unconfused, he took a seat next to her and began speaking, trying to maintain the words he spoken. Aaron's chest tightened. The calm he had built in his new life felt precarious, teetering on the edge of unraveling. He didn't know what she wanted or why she was here, but her desperation was palpable. Part of him wanted to stand up and walk away, to avoid reopening old wounds, but another part of him, the part that once loved her, was curious to hear what she had to say. Against his better judgment, he stayed, bracing himself for whatever was coming next. Claire took a deep breath, her hands fidgeting with the strap of her bag. The weight of the moment seemed to press down on her, and when she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I've been thinking about this for months," she began, her eyes glistening. "I know I hurt you, Aaron, more than I can ever put into words. What I did, it was selfish, cruel, and unforgivable, and I've hated myself every day since." Aaron stayed silent, his expression unreadable. Her words stirred something deep within him, but he wasn't ready to let his guard down. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, letting her continue. She looked down, as though ashamed to meet his gaze. "I don't have an excuse. There's no justification for what I did. I let my own insecurities and ambition cloud what really mattered. I betrayed you, and I destroyed the trust we built." Her voice cracked, and she wiped away a tear. "I didn't realize how much I needed you until you were gone." The words hung in the air, heavy with emotion. Claire paused, gathering herself before pressing on. "I've been in therapy. I've been trying to understand why I made the choices I did. And the truth is, I was scared of failing. At work, at home, as a wife. But instead of being honest with you, I made the worst mistake of my life." Aaron's jaw tightened. He wanted to believe she was being sincere, but the wounds were still fresh, and the memories of her betrayal were impossible to ignore. She reached across the table, her fingers trembling, but he didn't move. "Aaron, I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I'm just asking for a second chance, to prove that I can be better, that I can love you the way you deserve." Her plea was raw, filled with regret, but Aaron felt a storm of emotions brewing inside him. Part of him wanted to forgive, to believe that she had changed, but another part, the part that had rebuilt himself from the ground up, couldn't ignore the pain she had caused. He stayed quiet for a moment, his mind swirling with conflicting thoughts. "I hear you, Claire," he said finally, his tone calm but firm. "But this isn't something you can fix with an apology. Some things, once broken, can't be put back together, not the same way." His words, though measured, were final. As he spoke, he realized that while she might have been searching for redemption, He had already found his own peace, and it didn't involve her. Aaron exhaled slowly, his gaze steady as he looked at Claire. He felt the weight of her words, the remorse etched into her face, but he also felt the hard-earned strength he had built in her absence. For a moment, the room seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them and the painful history that hung between them. "I appreciate your apology," he began, his voice even but resolute. "I believe you're sorry, Claire. I believe you regret what you did, but some things, they leave scars too deep to heal. What happened between us broke something that can't be fixed." Claire's face crumpled, tears spilling freely now as she reached for his hand. "Aaron, please," she begged, her voice trembling. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I love you. I've always loved you. Please, don't give up on us." He gently pulled his hand away, the movement deliberate and calm. "Claire, I gave everything I had to our marriage," he said, his tone softening but remaining firm. "I fought for us, even when things were tough. But you made a choice that told me I wasn't enough for you. And that's not something I can forget or move past." Her sobs grew heavier, and she buried her face in her hands. Seeing her like this stirred an ache in his chest, but it wasn't the same pain as before. It was bittersweet, tinged with empathy, but no longer tethered to the love they once shared. "This isn't about punishing you or holding on to anger," he continued, his voice steady. "I've moved on, Claire. I found peace, and I've started rebuilding my life. Going back, trying to fix something that's already broken, it would only hurt us both." Claire looked up at him, her eyes pleading. "But I can change. I have changed. Isn't there a chance we can start over?" Aaron shook his head gently. "Starting over doesn't mean going back. It means moving forward, for both of us." As he stood to leave, Claire's sobs filled the small coffee shop, drawing the concerned glances of other patrons. Aaron hesitated for a brief moment, torn between compassion and the need to honor his own boundaries. Then, with a deep breath, he turned and walked toward the door. Outside, the rain had stopped, and a soft light broke through the clouds. Aaron stood for a moment, letting the cool air wash over him. The encounter had reopened old wounds, but it had also given him clarity. As he walked away, he felt both the sting of loss and the quiet triumph of reclaiming his life. For the first time, closure felt real, and with it came the promise of a brighter future. The days that followed the encounter with Claire felt lighter than Aaron had expected. Instead of dredging up old wounds, the experience solidified something he had been feeling for months. He was better off without her. Each morning he woke up in his trailer, greeted by the soft rustling of leaves and the distant call of birds. He felt a sense of gratitude for the life he had built. His routines remained simple but fulfilling. Running along the trails had become a daily ritual, not just for the exercise, but for the clarity it brought. The steady rhythm of his footsteps and the open expanse of nature were a constant reminder of how far he had come. The hills, with their ever-changing beauty, felt like a metaphor for his journey, challenging, yet rewarding, offering a perspective he never thought he'd have. Aaron's evenings were equally restorative. Sitting by the window with a book, or sketching the landscape outside, he found peace in the quiet moments. He no longer felt the need to fill the silence with distractions. Instead, he embraced it, letting it remind him of the strength he had gained through solitude. Gratitude began to seep into every aspect of his life. He was thankful for the chance to rediscover himself, for the space to heal, and for the lessons the pain had taught him. He reflected on how much lighter he felt now that he wasn't constantly trying to fix something broken. Letting go of the burden of Claire's betrayal had given him room to focus on his own happiness. Aaron's perspective on relationships had also shifted. He no longer viewed them as something to complete him, but as a complement to the life he was already building. Meeting Emily had been an unexpected joy, but he didn't feel the rush to define anything. He was content letting things unfold naturally, knowing he was finally in a place where his self-worth wasn't tied to someone else. As he stood on the summit of a familiar hill one morning, watching the sunrise cast a golden glow over the landscape, Aaron smiled to himself. Life without Claire wasn't just manageable. It was thriving. The peace and clarity he had gained were priceless, and for the first time in years, he felt truly free. Looking back, Aaron realized his journey had been as much about rediscovery as it was about survival. The betrayal that once felt like an ending had become a powerful catalyst for growth. He learned that trust, once broken, couldn't always be repaired, and that was okay. Trust, he now understood, was a fragile yet vital cornerstone of any relationship, and its absence revealed truths he had been reluctant to face. Resilience, Aaron discovered, wasn't about pretending to be unshaken. It was about embracing the pain, learning from it, and finding a way to move forward despite the scars. The hardest days, when the weight of betrayal threatened to overwhelm him, had taught him his own strength. He realized that healing didn't come from seeking closure from others, but from within. To anyone going through a similar situation, Aaron would offer this: it's okay to grieve. It's okay to feel lost and broken. But don't let someone else's choices define your worth. You're stronger than you think, and even when it feels like your world is falling apart, there's a path forward. Take it one day at a time and focus on what you can control: your own happiness, your own peace. He emphasized the importance of finding moments of joy, no matter how small. Happiness doesn't come all at once, he'd say. It comes in the quiet moments: a good cup of coffee, a sunset, a run through the hills. Those little things add up, and before you know it, you'll find yourself smiling again. Aaron also spoke of forgiveness, not for others but for oneself. It's not about excusing the people who hurt you, he explained. It's about letting go of the anger that keeps you tied to the past. Forgiveness is freedom, and you deserve that. Through his experience, Aaron had learned to value his own journey, embracing both the highs and lows. He realized that while pain was inevitable, it could also be transformative. Aaron's future felt like a blank canvas, and for the first time in a long while, he was excited about the possibilities. He didn't have a rigid plan, just a loose idea of continuing to explore the hills, focusing on his hobbies, and seeing where life led him. He thought about Emily and the easy connection they had formed. He wasn't rushing into anything, but he was open to the idea of something new, something light and genuine. More than anything, Aaron was ready to keep moving forward, knowing that his best days were still ahead. The past no longer defined him, and that realization was the greatest gift of all.